So, I'm from Alaska. I'm from Fairbanks, Alaska, to be exact. I thought I was going to be reading a book about Alaska. Thought I was going to be reading, it's called Looking for Alaska. When I was reading it, I was even wearing my North Pole t-shirt, because North Pole is in Alaska. Thought I was going to be getting a story kind of like John Krakauer's Into the Wild about Alaska. Looking for Alaska. Has nothing to do with Alaska. In fact, it's set down in Alabama and Florida, arguably the furthest states away from Alaska. So you might be asking yourself, why did I read this? Well, I saw on Amazon that they were doing this box set of books, John Green books. I knew he was a popular writer. Box set for $9. Four of his most popular novels for $9. So I said, what the hell, I'll get it. I'll get them, and I'll read them. I have no idea what any of them are about. I'm a middle-aged man here, reading Looking for Alaska. So what's a middle-aged man doing reading Looking for Alaska? Man, that's a question. That's a question. By way of introduction, I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press, and this is my review of John Green's Looking for Alaska, which has nothing to do with Alaska. What is it about? What I can tell about a bunch of boorish, angsty teenagers at a prep school, boarding school, somewhere far away from Alaska. I really liked this book. At first I was hating it. At first I was like, this is garbage. These teenagers, they don't talk like teenagers I ever knew. These teenagers in this are these pretentious, uppity, full of themselves, Kurt Vonnegut reading, poetry spouting, hipster, wannabe intellectual morons. I would have believed the story. This is setting me off already to get the get-go. I'm like, ugh, I just don't like these kids in this book. It's about kids at a boarding school, not in Alaska. Did I mention nothing takes place in Alaska? Kids in a boarding school somewhere down in Florida or Alabama or Mississippi, I can't remember which one, but it wasn't Alaska, that's for sure. And what happens is these kids, they get together, and I don't relate to any of them. I'm a professional author, and I don't relate to any of these kids and their angsty, pretentious, highfalutin way of speaking to each other. The way that they're talking to each other just does not ring true to me at all. I would have bought these teenagers if instead of talking about Kurt Vonnegut novels and JFK biographies and all the other pretentious crap that they think is making them sound intellectual. I would have rather these kids talked about World of Warcraft or a Call of War video games or debating Edward versus Jacob Twilight romance fiction. I'd rather them be talking about Harry Potter and Voldemort, Muggles. Because I think that's what kids talk about. That's what they talk about. They didn't talk about that kind of stuff in this book. They talked about Catcher in the Rye. They talked about deep, meaningful conversations. And it really initially set me off. I was like, God, this is crap. This sucks. But then I realized that all of these kids, high school kids are annoying to begin with. You don't want to have a conversation with a high school kid, ever. If you're an adult, you don't want to talk to these people. And I certainly don't want to read about them if they're like this. because you're just rolling your eyes all the time. You're just rolling your eyes so much that your whole face hurts because you don't like these kids and the way they speak to each other, because it doesn't ring true most of the time. But there are a lot of parts of it that do ring true. And that's where Alaska comes in. Because Alaska is not a state, it's a girl. At the boarding school, she is the hot chick. In fact, our main character is obsessed with her. And that's where the reality of what these teenagers are going through really rings true. And that's the genius behind this book. Because this book is a book of contradictions. Purposefully. God, I hope John Green did it purposely, and it's not just a happy accident. Either way, it doesn't matter, because the book is a classic. But let's talk about Alaska and the boys that surround her. So unbelievably relatable to every teenager that's ever lived. So if you're an adult now, you were once a teenager, and you can relate to a lot of the stuff that's happening in this book, even if you can't relate to a lot of the other stuff that's happening in this book. Because a lot of the stuff that's happening in this book is good-looking people that get a lot of attention and get away with treating people like crap all the time, and they get away with it because they're good-looking. And they get away with their pretentious, nonsensical, bullshit way of talking and way of treating people, and everyone just forgives them because they're Alaska. They look like Alaska. They're just super cute. And I think that's the point of it. I think that's the point of this book, is that we forgive people of horrible things based off of how they look and their charisma. And our main character, who's a young teenage boy, sees Alaska for the first time. And there's male gaze. This book is full of male gaze, and it's done purposefully. You know, a lot of people, a lot of feminists, a lot of everybody hates male gaze in books, where a man who's a writer puts a female character in a book, and then he just does nothing but talk about the descriptions of her breasts and her curves and her butt and everything that's sexual about her. And John Green does that in spades, because his narrator is a young boy, and that's, of course, no matter how pretentious a young boy can be, he's still boiled down to his base desires of being a young hormonal boy who notices every single curve of the girl that he's obsessed with. And no matter how poorly she treats him, no matter how much she leads him on, no matter how many other boyfriends she has, and no matter how hard she has friend-zoned this guy, he still forgives her of almost everything. She's an unlikable person, Alaska. And it's called Looking for Alaska. Because we all have searched, whether you're male or female, we've all searched for that representation of Alaska. We've all been there. We've all been enamored with someone that was so good looking that we kind of let them walk all over us. And one of John Green's, the thing that sells this book, because this is a controversial book, it creates debate, because half of me hates this book, half of me loves it as a work of genius. And that's why this is such a great book, is because it sparks debate, and it's taught in classes. It's the #1 banned book in the world at this point, because it talks frankly about teenagers and sex. In no uncertain terms does it shy away from any of it. And of course, you know, the religious people they're all up in arms about that. You gotta ban the book. I don't believe in banning books. Kids should read this. It's a tough read. But it makes them think. Makes them think about their own lives and how they allow other people to treat them. And I think that's an important discussion to have. Had John Green had he named his main character anything other than Alaska, this book would not have sold 10 copies. But that name Alaska is just mysterious enough, and that girl, the character he's created, is just charming and repulsive enough at the same time that you can't not want to read about her. And part of the reason you can't not want to read about her is because he takes the time with that male gaze and he describes her in detail. And that is the allure of who she is. That is who she is. No matter how hard she tries to be something beyond that, that's all she'll ever be. And it's the way that a lot of people go through life. Whether you're the pretty person or you're the one idolizing the pretty person, and whether you're the one that puts them on a pedestal. Now, here's the thing is, I think a lot of people, there's some other writers that have done a better job with teenage novels, like The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I think that captured teenagers a lot better. I think The Goldfinch that Donna Tartt wrote, which is a Pulitzer Prize winning novel, captures the angsty sort of hipster teenager a lot better than this does. But this asks some tough questions of us. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, and maybe it was just a happy accident. But the name Alaska, this book is called Looking for Alaska. It's mysterious. It fooled me. I thought I was going to get a book about Alaska. Instead, I got something better. Had he named it Looking for Jennifer, it wouldn't have sold more than 10 copies. It had to be named Looking for Alaska. The book pivots on a huge, huge event about 2/3 of the way through, where something, I'm not going to say whether it was grand or unbelievable or horrific or tragic or sad, but there's a big event that pivots the entire novel about 2/3 of the way through. And it's basically just about kids at a boarding school and this one kid who's obsessed with Alaska, the girl that treats him kind of poorly, but yet he lets her do it. I thought it was great. Initially, I was annoyed up to here with these kids, with reading about these kids. And then I started to see the deeper meaning of what John Green was going for. And I really started to appreciate this novel as a work of high literature. And I think other people have too. And every single person that reads this is going to take something away from it that's different than what I've taken away from it, but it's also kind of similar. I had no idea what I was going to get into when I read. I like picking up books without reading the back description, just launching into the story, not knowing where it's going to take me. And that's what I did with this, and I was surprised, pleasantly surprised. At first, hugely irritated, thinking I was reading just some pretentious hipster garbage. But then I understood that John Green was layering in some real life issues underneath that pretentious hipster garbage. And he was doing it on purpose because he wanted to create a contradiction that made us question and think about even our own past lives and how we've let people walk all over us. Or maybe vice versa. Maybe you were one of the beautiful people and you got away with crap your whole life, and everyone was still your best friend. And you have no idea why. Because you were an awful person and you knew it, but yet everybody still put you on a pedestal and worshipped you and invited you to every party. That's who Alaska is in Looking for Alaska. She's the ultimate popular girl, and you're 2 times fascinated by her, and you're 2 times repulsed by her. And reading it as a middle-aged dude, I could see through her bullshit so much. And I think if you're reading that as a teenager, I don't know what you'd think. Anyway, I give this a solid, I rate books 1 through 10, 1 out of 10, 9.5. I was surprised at how much that I grew to appreciate this book for what it was, even though a lot of it annoyed me and I didn't like any character in it. Looking for Alaska. I thought it was pretty damn good.